Hello, everybody. How's it going? Welcome. Cheers. Cheers to you guys. How's everybody doing? Welcome to our next class for NY Cocktail Expo Online Week. How are you guys enjoying the week so far? Why don't you tell me if you've been to some other classes? Chime in the chat. Our official hashtag is NYCE Online Expo Week. It's NYCE Online Week. So pop up in the Instagram, you guys. Let us know what's going on. Was that hey, Star, what's up? You're at Shannon's Tiki class. Great. Cheyenne, the Tiki. Guys, Tiki is one of my favorites, right? How amazing is Tiki? I love Tiki cocktails. Take me away. Good to see you guys. Michael, where are you guys tuning in from? Pop up in the chat. Start populating. Tell me where you're from. Are you a bartender, cocktail enthusiast? Cheers to you guys. I want to say cheers. My name is Matt Corey. I'm the founder of New York Cocktail Expo, bartender, VC. Cool. Yeah, bartender. Go ahead. Keep telling me where you're from the DMV, restaurant manager, the Bronx, Cheryl from Long Beach, California. That's what's up, Long Beach. Lori, chef from Michigan. What's up, Lori? Detroit, Jim. Guys, keep going in there. Tell me what's going on if you're in hospitality. I know chefs are attending today. Everybody's attending. So the Cocktail Expo began in 2015, 5 years ago, to put a spotlight on bars that were doing great things, to create more awareness about that. And spirit brands began to team with bars. And man, so many things started to happen. So many great things, networking, and the energy behind the Expo was fantastic. Take us here to today, where now we have over 2,000 attendees. Last year doing cocktail tastings from New York's best bars. And we are now home and have been home to the best cocktail of the year competition for the New York region and the acclaimed Tiki Throwdown. Anybody know what's up with the Tiki Throwdown from New York? New York's official tropical cocktail competition has featured bars like Death & Company, Aviary, American Whiskey, Mother of Pearl, some great bars, guys. So that has been really exciting and it's taken us to where we are today, New York Cocktail Expo Online Week. So as the premier cocktail expo and spirit expo of New York, at this time, guys, we're connecting everybody. Check out the spirit exhibitors at nycocktailexpo.com. Who else is in here? Thank you for having us. Camilo, guys, we're so happy to be together right now. Cheers, everybody. What are you guys drinking? Are you guys having a cocktail with us? What are you guys drinking? Let me know what you're having. I hope you've got a cocktail in you know, it's the centennial anniversary of the prohibition, 100 years since they tried to ban alcohol, and we just started kind of drinking more. Isn't that funny? You prohibit something and we start doing it more. Crazy. Yes, but it's true. New York, what's up? Whiskey sour. I was going to shake one of those up before. I might even still do that during the class. Apple cider margaritas, totally seasonal. Negroni. The great Negroni. We love it. Absolutely. A good Negroni with Cynar is fantastic. I love that, the boldness and the bitterness of it, guys. So great. So we want to keep moving along. We're going to get into this exciting class. Bartenders looking to sign up for Best Cocktail of the Year Tiki Throwdown. Now's the time to do it. Head to nycocktailexpo.com. Check out more free webinars also, guys, that are happening. And right now you can support the New York bars. If you guys are wondering how to support New York bars, anybody want to know in New York how to support New York bars, let me know, is visit them more. You can get all of the cocktails competing for Best Cocktail of the Year and for the Tiki Throwdown at bars like American Whiskey, The Bonnie, A10 Kitchen, Patent Pending, give it up for Patent Pending, We Did Brooklyn Stitch Bar. You guys know any of these bars, Salt Lake City? Tiki Throwdown bars, Patent Pending as well. Tiki Chick, Nuremberg Beer House in Staten Island, Fuchsia Tiki Bar in New Paltz. So guys, please go and visit the bars, have their competing cocktails and a spirit tasting as well. How cool is that? So right now, guys, without further ado, you guys ready to meet the instructor? You guys ready to meet the instructor for Sous Vide? Love us some Fuchsia. What's up, Steven? Great. Amazing. So guys, this is a crazy in-depth class. This is my second time taking the class. I love this class. There's so much amazing knowledge. And I'm telling you guys, I want you to load up all your questions into the Q&A. I'm going to be fielding questions to our instructor, load them up. When we've got Eamon on hand, pick his brain. He goes so in depth. This is an incredible class. Sous vide cocktails at home, guys. So without further ado, our instructor, Eamon Rockey, is a graduate of the Culinary Institute of America. He's worked in service, management, partnership at some of NYC's most highly regarded restaurants, including 11 Madison Park, Atera, Asca, and Bethany. He regularly speaks around the world on hospitality, management, and bartending, and he has spearheaded numerous critically acclaimed cocktail programs and is renowned for his international reintroduction of milk punches. Who's down with milk punch? I love me a clear cocktail. I love me a clarified cocktail. Camille says, milk punch. That's what's up. Love milk punch. Definitely, you guys. Yes, all the milk punch. Danny, you know what's up. Come on. Eamon is the guy for milk punch. I'm telling you guys, get your questions in the Q&A. I'll be fielding them to him. All right, guys. So without further ado, the man has been featured in the New York Times, Edible Manhattan, Eater, the New York Daily News, Cook Science, and the New Yorker. Guys, throw me some fire in the chat. Throw me some hands for Eamon Rockey, creator of Rocky's Milk Punch. Rocky's Botanical Liqueur. Give him some fire. Say what's up. Eamon, how are you, buddy?
Hi.
Yes.
I'm doing great. Thank you.
My good friend. It's so good to see you.
That's the most dramatic way I know how to do a Zoom entrance, you know? Just to keep you waiting.
I know. I was some anticipation. We got some fires going on there. We got some clapping.
Much fun.
Cool class, buddy. I'm going to let you take it from here. I'm going to throw some questions. Everybody, like I said, throw your questions. This is a great class in the Q&A. And Eamon, so happy to have you, man. It's great to see you. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Matt. It's been a fun day. I'm excited about this. I think this is what, the fourth time we've done a seminar similar to this in terms of the content?
Yeah, we've done Milk Punch and the Sous Vide class, which has been so fun. People love to take this class not once, but twice, because you go so into it. I love, it's inspiring, the things you talk about. So I'm going to be here, man. I got my Jewel Sous Vide on hand, just because, and buddy, I'm going to let you take it away. Do what you do. Here's your class. Say what's up. I'm going to turn my mic off and camera. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Later, Matt.
Bye.
Hi, everybody. For those of you who I've had the pleasure of chatting with and meeting in person, it's great to see you again. For those of you who have taken this class before, thanks for coming back. It's one that I really enjoyed very much myself. And for those of you who are new or just tuning in, this is a special concept, a special topic for me. My background is that of the kitchen. I started working in restaurants as a cook for a long time, and then made the transition into beverage and management and restaurants and bars and bar openings, and sort of tried to combine the two skill sets and the two areas of study. So that's really what this particular seminar is all about, this particular webinar, because it takes cooking technique, it takes kitchen technique and culinary sort of skill sets and combines them with a traditional bar approach. And you'll see them all come together very shortly. Matt's right. We've done a sous vide seminar before. We've done advanced cocktail technique before. This is sort of a concept and technique seminar that has gone by a few different names. But ultimately, this is a seminar that is about solubility. And we don't call it a solubility seminar because I think that the tickets might not sell quite as much. But sous vide is an important word, and we'll talk about that. Solubility is really the core of the subject matter that we're going to cover. And what do I mean when I say solubility? When I'm referring to solubility in this case, it's taking a solvent, something, usually a liquid, and dissolving something else in it. That is what I'm referring to when I'm talking about solubility within this context, right? And this is not a sous vide seminar because we are not actually practicing sous vide. 9 times out of 10, maybe even more than that, maybe 95, 98% of the time whenever somebody's practicing quote unquote sous vide technology or sous vide technique, they're not actually using sous vide technique. And why is that? Sous vide technique and literally translates in French to under vacuum, right? Whenever I'm making a steak in an immersion circulator bath, or whenever I'm cooking vegetables or I'm cooking booze or gin or bourbon, I'm generally not using a cryovac machine or vacuum sealer to engage a vacuum to be able to produce under vacuum cooking technique, right? So this is not sous vide, and we don't need to engage sous vide with this, right? Sous vide would imply that I had a vacuum chamber. I would seal something in, usually a plastic bag using a vacuum chamber. It would have a heat sealed edge, right? So there's nowhere for the oxygen or liquid inside to get out, right? producing a reduced oxygen environment, a reduced oxygen packaging, ROP packaging. That is then the first step in being able to produce a sous vide steak or celeriac or bourbon infused with cinnamon or whatever, right? But we are going to use something that's very similar. This is just a very simple Ziploc bag. But I just want to point out this is not technically sous vide, and I never would claim it is. Also, secondly, this is not a sous vide machine. This is an immersion circulator. And it's important to distinguish the two from each other, because not everything that I do in a immersion circulator bath, right? And here, I'll actually move this over for a second so you can see what we got going on here. This is a big plastic container with a little semi-phallic item that is immersed into it, set to a specific temperature that generates a whirlpool set to 1/10 of a degree in Celsius or Fahrenheit, but accurate to 1/10 of a degree, either way, specific temperature. In this case, 78 degrees Celsius. I'll talk about why that's important in a moment also. But the point being, this is an immersion circulator. It immerses into the liquid and circulates the liquid, producing a set temperature for that liquid that is very consistent, and it will always stay at that specific temperature. The first use of this, as I understand it, was for open heart and organ transplants in general, where you would somebody unfortunately die, maybe a very sudden and unexpected death that they were not planning. Someone else, and they were an organ donor, someone else needs their heart, right? So they would slice them open, put the heart on ice, bring the heart to the hospital, get one of these bad boys going, find the temperature, the internal temperature of the recipient of the organ, plop the heart into one of these, so that the heart exact temperature of the recipient's body and that new living, desperate for the heart person is going more often receive that transplant than if it's at a different temperature, right? It's a really, really, really cool piece of technology that I just imagine some open heart surgeon being like, you know what I can also do with this is make great burgers, right? So it's an interesting sort of application of a medical piece of technology, kind of like the rotary evaporator and a few other pieces of technology that have made their ways into kitchen from blood labs and hospitals, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a pretty neat tool, super duper useful. I love having these in bars and restaurants. Since I started working with them in bars and restaurants, I've never been able to stop. Advantages to using this: there is no open flame, right? That means that I can take something that's very high proof as Everclear, that's damn near 100% ethanol. I can take that and I can get it pretty hot in here without risk of igniting it, without risk of fire, right? Because we're just using water here. There are some safety concerns with this, but much, much less than taking high-proof booze and throwing it onto a fire or onto a burner, right? So using this, there's consistency considerations. It's a very green use of technology. We're not burning anything. It is a very safe application. There's no open flame, right? So there's a lot of advantages to using this. And it's also space efficient, right? I've used them before where it's the basket that holds it is barely bigger than the actual circulator. It's very small, and you can actually squeeze it into the space that only a bottle would fit in a bar. So I highly encourage people to use and investigate using immersion circulators. And it's also a hell of a lot cheaper than a stove, right? This probably costs at this point maybe like 125 bucks, right? This has lasted me for 5 or 6 years. It's awesome. It's a Nomiku model. There are others out there. There's a phenomenal Polyscience version. There's a Joule. There's an Innova machine. There's tons of them out there, and they're all generally pretty damn good. So there are a couple things that I want to get working here, and I'll tell you sort of as I'm doing what I'm doing, and then return to the why shortly thereafter. So here I have just a piece of aluminum foil that is laid out on a small baking sheet. These are cocoa nibs. Cocoa nibs, what you might know as like toasted, fermented, raw chocolate, right? So this is the cocoa butter and the cocoa solids that are still in sort of raw form, right? They have not been processed to produce what would be cocoa powder or cocoa butter or cocoa sort of Dutch cocoa or anything like that, right? It's just the cocoa nibs that have been extracted from the pod, taken off the tree. And I'm going to put them onto this baking sheet and throw them in the oven. Here on my end. Now, it's not so much important how long we're leaving them in the oven. It's not so much important what temperature per se. I have the oven here set to about 350, but you could do 425. It really doesn't matter. The point of what we're trying to do is to wake them up, right? It's going to smell great. They're going to look glossy because, again, cocoa nibs have tons of cocoa butter in them, right? Tons of fat, right? So what we're trying to do is we're trying to wake them up, bring out that fat, make it available, because we're going to dive into solubility to extract the flavor from the cocoa nibs, that chocolate flavor, and put that spirit or put that cocoa nib flavor into a spirit, right? But to do that, I want to wake them up first. I could just throw those nibs right into spirit, but again, kind of thinking somewhat similarly like the heart transplant, I want to make those nibs as available as possible, the flavors as available as possible to the spirit as I can. Heat does that, right? So we're beginning with 250 gram batch of cocoa nibs that I've thrown onto that baking sheet. We're gonna wait until it comes up to temperature. It's gonna smell like we're cooking chocolate chip cookies in the house, right? So you'll know when they are ready. Matt, are there any questions thus far? I know I'm speaking a little bit quickly, but we got a lot of ground to cover, but I wanna make sure I don't jump over anyone.
Yeah, let me field you a question here. We do have one about bitters. Can you make bitters with this method? If you can, you want to share a quick recipe?
Sure. It's so funny. I was planning on talking about bitters a little bit later because bitters, it's something you can do yourself in your home or in your bar. Back in like 2008, everybody started making their own bitters. Almost every bar had their own bitters. Some were very famous. I made a few different versions of bitters as well. I love Madison Park actually still has bottles of the bitters that we made back in, 2009 for the bar. It was super fun. You can certainly use an immersion circulator to do certain infusions for bitters. Generally the bitters that I've made, and there are plenty of exceptions to what I'm about to say, but generally the bitters that I have made, I've been making them with very high proof spirits, and I've allowed them to rest over time. So I haven't really engaged heat to be able to produce the bitters I've made in past. It's been more of a time and high proof, like lots of alcohol over time usually results in a really good extraction because of solubility, right? So I haven't used an immersion circulator to produce bitters. Immersion circulators work really, really well when it concerns high proof spirits and high intensity, high concentration flavors. They work really well at being able to extract flavor very quickly. Which is interesting because a lot of chefs use immersion circulators to cook something for a very long time. Think like, if you were going to make lamb shanks, you could do them in this and you could let them cook for like 2 or 3 days, right? At a very low temperature, resulting in a very juicy, tender piece of lamb, right? But in bars, I often use immersion circulators for the exact opposite reason. I want to get this thing really hot and I want to use something that's pretty high proof, right? To extract flavor very, very quickly. Bitters is not usually something that I'm trying to rush the process, right? But for the applications we're using it for today, it works exceptionally well. And I'll tell you why that is. I have my immersion circulator right now set to 78 degrees Celsius. 78 degrees Celsius is the perfect temperature for using an immersion circulator with ethanol, with anything alcoholic, because why? And normally this is where I look for people's hands to go up. If you know the answer, shout it out really quick, and if I see a bubble, I'll call it. But if not, I'll just tell you. So 78 degrees Celsius is the temperature at which ethanol boils. That is incredibly important to know because these things can go higher than that. I can set this to, let's see, how high does this thing go? 95 degrees Celsius. 95 degrees Celsius is damn near the boiling temperature of water. Water and ethanol are very, very different chemicals and they boil at very different temperatures, right? In this particular case, one boils at 78 in the case of ethanol, and the other boils at 100 degrees Celsius. I'm sure we all know that. If I were to take a bag, whether sealed with heat or just zipped across, if I were to take this and fill it full of a high ethanol, high proof solution and throw it into a bath at 95 degrees Celsius, what happens? I know all of you are yelling at your screen. You're yelling, it'll boil and it'll explode. It'll create a huge mess. It'll ruin your circulator and you'll be miserable. You won't have your bitters or your chocolate or cinnamon infusion. You won't have whatever it is done, right? Because it will actually explode in the bath. Big time mess, not fun at all. Don't do it, right? So I'm setting this to 78 degrees Celsius because I know that that is the boiling temperature of ethanol. And if it goes beyond that, it will explode. It will boil, right? But it's not going to do that because I'm keeping my temperature very steadily at 78. That's, again, why these are so safe, if you know how to use them, and so effective, right? So I'm going to go check in on our cocoa nibs.
Eamon, perfect timing as you brought up cocoa nibs. I have a question from Cheryl Hall. If you want to say hi, Cheryl.
Hi, Cheryl.
She says, where can I buy raw cocoa nibs?
So it depends on where you live, you know. If you live in a town that may not have like a specialty grocery store, you might need to buy them online. I'm sure that you can buy them on Amazon. There's a little store in New York where I bought these earlier today, actually, called New York Cake. Used to be called Cake and Bake. It's an awesome store. But again, literally, like Amazon Prime is the way we all survived at this point. Totally go on Amazon Prime and find yourself some cocoa nibs if that's the best solution for you.
I'm going to ask you some relevant questions if they pop up to what you're talking about, just so you can pop in. Anything else, guys? We're doing a Q&A session with Eamon. We will have his time for a bit. So if other general questions that he might not be speaking about, load them into the Q&A. We're definitely getting to all these questions. So, but Eamon, I will pop in for relevant stuff quick. Cool?
Please pop in as much as you want. The last thing I want is to jump over a topic that we could dive into further.
Yeah, loving it.
Did I successfully answer the bidders question? Was that enough information? Did I speak to it enough? Maybe, maybe not.
Cheryl will let us know when she wants to pop in the chat. Cheryl, has he answered your question?
Okay. In the meantime, we have 375 milliliters of brandy that I just poured into a Ziploc bag that is sitting just so it's stable inside of a plastic container with a flat bottom, right? I don't have a Vanna White tonight, so we're sort of doing this the safe way, you know, wrapping this plastic bag around the sides of this container, keeps it stable, keeps it from falling over. So 375 grams of brandy, an aged brandy in this bag. I'm gonna go grab the cocoa nibs.
So relevant question while you're getting the cocoa nibs from John and Chundia. What's up, John? Saying, does heat wake up, quote unquote, wake up everything or just dry products?
Well, it works with polar bears. No?
Okay.
Get it? Okay. You know, that's a good question, John. I would have to give that some thought. I would think that because, you know, and not to oversimplify it, but, you know, things can exist in 3 different states of matter in most ways, right? And there are more, but that's like geek stuff. Solid, liquid, gas, right? And you take something like water, and this is an important one when solubility is concerned, and that's what this whole class is really revolving around. You freeze water at a cold temperature, and it's solid, and it's virtually impermeable. Nothing's happening with it, right? You make it a liquid, and it's flowing, and it's touching things, it's getting around things. You make it a gas, and it's just permeating everything that it comes into contact with, right? Now, you can't smell them, which is sad because they smell awesome, but I've just pulled these beautiful cocoa nibs from the oven. Can you see that they're a little shiny, right? They were not shiny before. I'll show you what they looked like before. They looked dusty and sort of drab, right? So this is before. I don't know if you can tell, but they're sort of like dusty and sort of leathery looking. But now they're shiny, right? And they're shiny and they have like this mahogany color, almost red color. They're beautiful. And the whole room smells like chocolate right now. And that's what I mean, because that fat, that cocoa butter that's in these cocoa nibs is actually in a liquid form now. There is this oozing sort of waxy oil coming off the cocoa nibs. That's the cocoa fat, right? And between the cocoa, actually the structure of these guys, we're gonna be able to extract a lot more flavor much more quickly because they've been warmed up. So the answer to your question, I think, John, is probably, yeah, probably most things do wake up with heat. In this particular case, it works really well. Although, you know, I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with the technique oleosacrum. Oleosacrum is a technique usually used for punch, not always, but usually used for punch, at least traditionally, whereby you take citrus peels and you throw them into a container of sugar, into a bag, into whatever, some sort of container with sugar. And over time, usually takes days, the sugar will actually extract all of the fat and all of the water, moisture from the citrus peels, right? So you get the oil from lemon peel, for instance, and all the water that's in the peel too, and the sugar will actually pull it out. I never do that heated. There are a lot of people that disagree with me, and I will be happy to argue with them in person or virtually. It is not a technique that I think is appropriate to use heat. Why? Because I want my oleosaccharum to be fresh. I want it to taste like fresh citrus. I do not want it to taste like marmalade. Marmalade is awesome, but it's not oleosaccharum. Oleosaccharum should taste like fresh citrus peels. I have this here for a reason. We're getting to it later. Okay, so sometimes, my point is, sometimes you don't want to use heat to extract flavor because you're not looking to extract all the flavor or to change the flavor with heat. You're looking to take fresh flavors. Okay, so check this out. So this is cocoa nibs, toasted, 250 grams of them with 375 milliliters of brandy, aged French brandy. I'm throwing it into a fairly large Ziploc bag. This is a gallon Ziploc bag. Zipping up the top after pushing out as much air as possible. You can see, and this is important, that most of the liquid, while it is kind of murky now because of the cocoa nibs, it's still pretty light in color. The cocoa nibs, of course, are dark, but you can see here at the top, right? The liquid is still pretty light. I'll come back to that later. I'll also take this, since I just said it out loud, I'll take this time to point out the difference between using volumetric measurements and weight measurements, right? I did the cocoa nibs in grams, and I did the brandy in volume, in milliliters, right? And that's because you can take the same weight, weight of cocoa nibs, and grind it into a very fine powder and press it down and pack it and make it like a puck, right? Versus the nibs, which are light and fluffy and sort of like little chunks. They're like almost like a cereal, like grape nuts, right? They take up much more space, even though it's the same amount of stuff, right? That is why we use a weight measurement for the cocoa nibs. Second, we use volumetric measurements for liquids most of the time, not always, but most of the time, especially when there's alcohol involved, because alcohol is much lighter than water. And whenever you have a high proof solution, you can do a side-by-side test. If you have a high proof solution, let's just say vodka, right? You have this is Tito's vodka. 50 grams of this and 50 grams of water side by side, one of them will be much higher than the other, and the other will be much lower, right? Because there's a lot of alcohol in one of them, right? And so the volume differences will be different while the weights will be the same. That's why we use volumetric measurements for liquids, usually, especially whenever we have ethanol solutions. And we use weight measurements for solids. If that's a little confusing, we can come back to it, but it's important because it will make a difference, especially if you're doing things like bitters. Is a really good example because a few grams either way of something that's very intense in flavor can make a huge difference. I really encourage people to use volumetric measurements generally for liquids and weight measurements for solids. Okay, so what do we have going on now? We have our cocoa nibs. Yes.
Yeah, buddy. I mean, we're going so in depth, which is great. And I want to just poll the audience. Is everyone enjoying the in-depth views here, the insight of going deep into the topics that are being asked? And as the general audience, yes. Yeah, man, I love it too. But that's why I said I take this course a few times. And I wanted to chime in because there are questions related to what you're talking about. And I think they're important to ask. And once again, everybody, on topic points, I'm going to come in and ask Eamon, but if it's just a general question, we're going to do it at the end of the Q&A. So from Danny Cutman, what's up, Danny? I love you chiming in, man. We've been talking and engaging and stuff. Glad you're around. Cheers to you. You talk about the boiling point of ethanol. When doing extractions of delicate herbs, is it best to set the temperature to boiling point of the desired violation of molecules, since most have boiling points lower than ethanol, or does it not matter in fast extractions? Thank you.
So to repeat the question, and please get by your keyboard, Danny, so we can confirm that this is actually what you're asking. So you're saying, if I know I want to extract a specific compound from a specific ingredient, you brought up herbs, awesome. So let's just say we were using an herb that had a lot of eugenol in it, and we're like, we want to get the eugenol out, that's the flavor, the aroma we're trying to take out. That is volatile, right? That becomes volatile at 56 degrees Celsius. I'm going to put it into booze, but I'm only going to heat the booze up to 56 degrees Celsius because I know that the compound I'm trying to extract comes out at that temperature. Is that what you're asking? If that is what you're, yes, perfect. If that is what you're asking, yes. There are other factors at play though. If you're using herbs that are either still fresh or are, we're going to be doing something with tea in a moment. Actually, right after we finish answering your question, that has a lot of surface area. Tea is a leaf, right? Or stems and leaves, right? There's a lot of surface area. It's generally pretty porous. It extracts really well, which is why we drink it, which is why I'm drinking tea right now. So, if you have a bunch of stuff in your tea or in your herb that you're trying to extract, you don't want to get it too hot for whatever reason. Maybe you're trying to avoid things that are volatile at other temperatures. You can 100% dial your circulator into a lower temperature to extract them. That said, if we're working with something like cocoa nibs, which are very dense, right? And even if we know that the cocoa flavor that we're looking for comes out at a temperature below 78, I'm still going to get it up. I'm going to get it up higher because I really want that ethanol and the water that's present in the brandy as well. We'll talk about that shortly too. We want that to permeate the cocoa nib. If we don't permeate the cocoa nib, then we're not going to get anything out of it, even if theoretically that compound is volatile at a lower temperature. Higher heat usually results in more degradation of the ingredient, so you usually get more flavor, right? So I go higher as long as it makes sense and it doesn't damage anything, right? And with cocoa, it all tastes good, man, right? You can take cocoa powder and like mix it into milk and add some honey or some sugar, and it's delicious. So for me, I don't mind heating this up farther. It doesn't matter to me. I want to get it as hot as possible to extract as much flavor out as possible. But theoretically, depending on the ingredients and the application, what you're saying is spot on for sure. And just, to sort of, again, bridge us from the cocoa infusion to the tea infusion that we're about to do, the tea experiment, actually. And this is really fun. It's one of my favorites to do. Surface area and hydration are very, very important considerations. That is, how much surface area does the ingredient have that we're trying to extract from, right? You wouldn't take like a whole dried orange, just like a whole dried orange, and throw it into vodka and just hope that the vodka strips out all the flavor. No, you're going to break it up. You're going to give the vodka access to the entirety of the fruit, right? And give it a path in and a path out to come out with the flavor. So if you don't have surface area, you're not going to get a whole lot of flavor. It's really, really important to remember that. You think about something like fresh mint. Doing fresh mint infusions, I love. I do fresh mint infusions usually over a 24-hour period in a refrigerator with cold water. Then I strain out the mint, right? Press it, squeeze it to get all the goodness out. And then I sweeten, still at a cold temperature, I sweeten that liquid, that infusion with sugar, usually 1-to-1 volumetrically, and weight actually doesn't matter because sugar and water share the same volumetric and weight properties when they are separate, which is actually really, really, really cool and helpful whenever you're doing work like this, right? So I do a cold infusion overnight to make sure that I'm getting all the flavor that I want out, and that flavor is always fresh and always cool. I'm not looking for a hot mint syrup. Although hot mint tea at a Moroccan restaurant is delicious, that's not what I'm trying to use in my mint julep, right? I want fresh, cold, icy, refreshing mint flavor. You get that only if you keep your mint in the cooler and you do your infusion in the cooler as well. Does that all make sense? Okay.
Yeah, some of the messages are a bit delayed after your question, but yep, yes, the answer is yes.
Awesome.
Thanks, man. This is awesome, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah. All right. So here we have 3 identical Ziploc bags that are filled with or contain 3 identical amounts of Japanese sencha tea. Now, you could use any tea. You could really use any ingredient you want for this. But for the work that we're doing, sencha is perfect, and I'll tell you why. The weight of this amount of tea is 30 grams. 30 grams in each of these bags. I weighed them out just before we started this webinar. Sencha tea, and I'm a tea geek. I love tea. I drink it every day. And I love learning about it and experiencing new teas, drinking classic teas, etc. Sencha tea is perfect for what we're about to do for a few reasons. One, Japanese tea, where many other nations will fire roast their tea or do more sort of like robust and aggressive drying and processing techniques. Japanese don't do as much of that, especially not when it comes to making things like sencha or matcha, right?
Can you spell sencha and matcha? Can you spell sencha for the audience, please?
Sencha. High quality sencha tea is outrageously delicious. It is so good, in fact, that you can, if it's a high quality one, if it's a really good sencha tea, which doesn't cost too much, but just don't get the cheap stuff, right? You can actually sprinkle it over rice and eat it as a snack. It is so damn good. It tastes like seaweed and grass. It's wonderful. This is a medium grade sencha tea, I'll be honest with you, because we're not doing this to produce a phenomenal cup of tea. Rather, we're doing this as an experiment in solubility, right? We're doing very, very different things. We're abusing this tea. The point, though, is that when you make sencha tea, they're steaming it, right? They're not roasting it over fire. There's no aggressive, overt fermentation like in a pu'er, right? This is a very delicate production process that results in a very clean, delicate, grassy, green tea. Sencha tea is awesome for this. Secondly, sencha tea tends to be somewhat breakable, like it's crisp. I don't know if you guys can hear that, but there's this snappiness to it, and it's almost like tiny little chips, right? There's a lot of surface area to this tea without having to bloom it too much, right? If you've ever had like a monkey picked oolong, or gunpowder oolong, they're usually rolled in these tight little balls. Doing something like this with that style of tea would be a little counterproductive because it would take a long time for the tea just to open up. Sencha tends to already be fairly open, right? So it ends up being a very good tea for this experiment. I really enjoy doing it very much. So we have 30 grams of tea here in each of these bags. I'm now going to load the bags up with 3 different solvents. And this is really where I'm going to bring it home to solubility. This is the purpose of this talk. So I take our bag of tea and I set it inside a little container. I set the container on a scale. I'll show you what I got going on here. I wish I had a larger studio setup, but trust me, it's all here. So we're going to now take this container and we're going to add 425 grams of water. Getting very close. Oop. Don't want to let it spill. Great. Okay, cool. 425 grams of water with 30 grams of sencha tea. Now, for any of those of you who were listening to me earlier talking about using volumetric measurements for liquids and weight measurements for solids, I'm going weight on this because this is not something that we're doing to create consistency and outcome between the 3 products per se. What we're trying to do is make sure that we have the same density, essentially, of liquid and solids, the tea and the solvent, in this case, water, in each of the 3 bags. I'll show you what I mean in a moment, right? So here we have 30 grams of sencha Japanese green tea and 425 grams of water, our solvent, in this bag. The solvent is going to be what extracts the flavor from the tea, right?
Sorry, I have a question from VC who is asking about the water. Is it hot, cold, room temperature?
Room temp. Room temp. That's a great question because, again, we're trying to create a controlled experiment when we have 3 bags with 3 of the exact weights of tea, but it could be anything. We do this with black pepper, we do this with cinnamon, we do it with anything. Tea works really well. I'll show you why momentarily. And then 3 solvents, or really 2 solvents in a few different solutions and proportions. In this case, water and ethanol, right? Because the first one is pure water, pure H2O. Now we have vodka, which give or take is about 50-50 water and ethanol, right? And that's kind of where I think this experiment gets really fun. Now, again, we're going to go 425 grams of vodka in this bag with the 30 grams of tea. Bottle number 2. Okay, 425 grams of vodka with our 30 grams of tea, sealed in the bag, just like we did with water. Room temperature for consistency's sake. If we were to go hot on any of them, it would start the extraction, a much more aggressive extraction earlier. No doubt there's flavor that is being extracted by the tea or from the tea by the water and by the vodka, by the ethanol in the vodka, but it's not an aggressive extraction yet. And now we have our big boy bottle, almost pure ethanol, 95% ethanol, 425 grams of this in a bag. Almost there. And again, what is the point here? Why are we doing this? What I'm trying to illustrate is that if you consider solubility at the onset of your experiment, you will be able, kind of as I think was asked earlier by Danny, if I'm not mistaken, ask about the right method, or ask yourself what the right method is to get the flavors you're looking for, right? So I have here a bag of damn near pure ethanol, little touch of water, because getting purely dehydrated ethanol is very, very difficult, very expensive. All right. So 1, 2, 3, water, vodka, ethanol, 30 grams of tea, 425 grams each of water, vodka, ethanol, at room temperature, in the same room, into a 78-degree bath. All right. I'm going to start a timer for 10 minutes. We'll see what happens. If I can learn to operate my iPhone.
All right, so while you're doing that, let me come in here and say, I hope everyone's enjoying the class so far. Thanks so much for your questions. Eamon, thanks so much for the explanations. VC has another question. The ethanol name you're using, and the ethanol is coming right out of the bottle. There's no change in temperature. It's room temp.
That is exactly right. So the producer of this particular moonshine, essentially grain alcohol, is Everclear. There are a couple others out there. There are actually a couple others that are higher proof than this, which I didn't think was possible, at least not for cheap stuff. But I saw them the other day, and it was really cool. So you're looking for high proof grain alcohol. Again, there are a few different producers out there. This one, I believe Everclear is made in New Jersey, right? Pretty sure. And it's not expensive. It's very cheap. Do whatever you want with this. I have used this in past. There was a question about bitters earlier. I've used it in past to make bitters just because it's such a great solvent. And again, what is a solvent? A solvent is something that when you add a product, a flavorful ingredient to it, the solvent will rip out the flavor, rip out the color, and provide you with an infusion. Right, Matt's doing something with the solvent, it looks like there. You know, that is flavorful and can be used as an ingredient or seasoning or whatever in a cocktail or food, etc. And it's very important to consider what your solvent is, because it will greatly distinguish the outcome of the product. So in this case, we have liquid solvents at play, right? Water is our solvent in the pure water tea infusion, what our normal tea infusions are, right? And we have ethanol as our second infusion, so an alcohol-soluble infusion. There are also fat-soluble compounds. There are acid-soluble compounds, right? Any of you who have cooked professionally, like my background is cooking, if you look at an old French recipe for making most sauces, most soups, etc., you know, the whole process will usually or often start with cooking something in olive oil or butter, right? You're getting the fat-soluble elements out of your shallots and your garlic and your onions and your, you know, your thyme or whatever it is you're sweating in that little bit of oil, right? And then usually there's the addition of some sort of alcoholic element, right? Either a Madeira or a red wine or a white wine, right? So with that, you're not just getting alcohol-soluble stuff, you're getting water-soluble stuff, because wine is mostly water, right? There's also a shitload of acid in wine, right? So you're getting acid-soluble things from those onions and from those shallots, and you're also getting the alcohol-soluble stuff too, right? So by the time you're 15 minutes into producing the beginning layer of flavor for this soup, you're already hitting you know, the fat soluble stuff with the butter, the alcohol soluble stuff with the wine, the acid soluble stuff if you're adding maybe a bit of sherry vinegar as an example, right? All of these things are layering onto each other, and that's how solubility is deeply impactful in our everyday life and has been for hundreds of years, even before, arguably, even before people really understood why what was happening was happening. It's just made things taste better, right? So here we have an experiment in process with two solvents, water and ethanol, and we have the same exact proportions to the dry ingredient, which will allow us to compare them apples to apples, side by side. Really, really fun experiment that I love to do. Let's check in on our cocoa nibs. So I don't know, I wish you guys could smell this. Even through the bag, there's a lot of chocolate coming out of this, right? And while this is still kind of clear at the top, it's getting a lot darker, right? It's darker, and the smell, the chocolate smell coming off this bag is really, really perceptible. It's a pretty cool process, and one that takes not that long to make a really big impact. This would not happen nearly as quickly, arguably not at all, at room temperature or at a cooler temperature. Matt, we have more questions or no? We good?
Yeah, I was just gonna. That's what I was doing, man. The cocoa nibs thing. I've tasted it, you know, and it's so rich and so delicious, and you get that eye popping effect when you sip it. And I'm like, man, I need chocolate, so I'm doing chocolate bourbon on layered with my, chocolate bitters layered with my bourbon here. I'm like, I have to taste at least something and be inspired.
What could be wrong?
Nothing. It's going great. We have more questions. Yes. Something that I actually wanted to know, with so many, you know, other available options and people and different producers coming out, how else can we use immersion circulation technique with other vessels besides plastic bags that can be hang out in the water bath for all these different temperatures, etc.? Like, can we use other stuff, or does it have to be the plastic bag Ziploc vacuum seal thing?
I love that question. You know,
right?
So
and that's coming from a few people asked that. I actually want to shout them out here. You know, that's going to be Alicia Erickson talking about that, and a couple of other folks too. So let's hit it. Yeah. Cheers. Shout out.
So, okay.
Great question.
Yeah. Awesome question. And the answer is yes. If that's an appropriate answer to that question, you can certainly use any kind of vessel, not any kind of vessel, many different kinds of vessels in an immersion circular bath. As long as what you're putting into it allows you to conduct heat from the bath itself to the liquid. For instance, you wouldn't want to use like a styrofoam container for any reason, and I can think of at least, in a bath, because it's designed to insulate, right? So you want to use things that are like heavy duty glass. You want to use metal containers, things that conduct heat. So the bath is able to equalize the temperature between it and the liquid in the container as quickly as possible. That's when you get an effective immersion circulator bath. There may be other applications where you wouldn't want to have highly conductive materials, you know, but I can't think of any off the top of my head, right?
Well, I just want to make sure that I'm getting it too, because you know, I definitely want to know as well. Are we talking about the vessel, the bath vessel, or are we talking about the plastic bag that's going to hold what we're working with? So, for example, you're seeing reports on banana peels being used, aloe, all these different materials that are sustainable, less waste, et cetera, et cetera. Do we have anything like that on the market that we can get down with for this, except for like Ziploc and stuff like that?
Well, I mean, like your container needs to be able to hold the liquid in it and prevent it from flowing into the liquid of the bath, right? So, you know, if there's a recycled, you know, plastic container that you like that's sturdy enough to go in and out of this bath, God bless. You know, glass works great. If I wanted to, I could take this empty Tito's bottle that I just emptied out for a little experiment here, and I could, you know, heat it up with some water, peel off the labels, make it clean, right? And then fill it and put it in the bath. And I'll actually show you how it works.
Yeah. So those of you that want to be pioneers out there and experiment different stuff and find that and we don't have any standards in this, that's the point. We don't have any less waste standards in Sous Vide with new materials on the bags yet, but this is an avenue that can be explored and
I mean, maybe. What I guess I'm driving at though is that if you're using a glass or metal or durable plastic container, you can use it over and over and over and over.
Right. It's not a single use.
Right.
We're still working on less waste, so there is a balance that still is cool. Right on. I'd like that answer. Thank you, Eamon.
Definitely. So, but just to point out a couple things here in terms of just good immersion circulator etiquette and technique, I have a bottle of Tito's that maybe is a little less than halfway full, right? And if I wanted to put this into the bath, right, and I throw it in to the pool, it's kind of bobbing around, right? You can see that. It's unstable, right? I wouldn't feel comfortable walking away from this because over time that circulator is moving, the water is moving, and then I'll come back like half an hour later and this is dumped over. And if it wasn't full of water, let's say it was full of, I don't know, some really fancy cognac, I'd be really upset about that, right? I wouldn't want this to tip over. So what you can do, you want to ensure that the liquid volume of the bottle, literally, visibly, is the same height as the liquid in the circulator. That means that it will sink and it will be stable. This is no longer bubbling around. You see? It is sunk to the bottom of this and it's stable. You got to be careful if you're using something that evaporates. Alcohol evaporates more quickly because that has a lower temperature, lower boiling temperature than water. The liquid inside the bottle will evaporate over time, not so quickly, but you wouldn't want to do this for 2 days with the top off, right? But for 4 hours with the top off, filled to the point that it is at least the height of the liquid of the bath, totally cool. And it's important that the top is off. Why? Right? If I were to put the top on this, then for whatever reason, my beautiful, loving cat walks by and spins this knob with its tail, and it spins the knob to the point that it's higher than the boiling point of ethanol, or if I'm just an idiot and I screwed up and I accidentally dial it in for too high, this starts boiling inside a sealed container and you have a grenade. No good. You don't want to come into a room full of broken glass and like splattered cocoa nibs or whatever, right? So it's important that if you're using a liquid that is potentially going to get hot and potentially even boil, use something like a Ziploc bag that is able to expand and give a little bit. Keep an eye on it. If you're going to put something into a metal container like a ISI siphon or a soda siphon, right? I use those a lot with circulators. If you're going to put them in this, make sure that you have the top off so it can vent, right? You don't want to injure yourself. You don't want to damage your stuff. You don't want to make a mess in your apartment or your bar, right? So keep the top off. You may have gone to, some of you perhaps have gone to bars that have been using these or kitchens that have been using these. The Dead Rabbit is one of my favorites. Their Irish coffee is iconic. They use an immersion circulator bath to keep their bottles of hot coffee hot, right? And then they have a separate container with the cream in it. It's incredibly simple. They have it dialed in like science. It's bulletproof. A really, really, really great approach as a great application or a great example of a live and living color phenomenal bar that uses this technology in a very simple and elegant way to great results. One of my favorite applications for immersion circulators in bars is to have a small one, or at least one like this in a small container behind the bar. So if you, for instance, you have a syrup or an infusion that you've had for a little while, it's completely stable, it's not bad, but the sugar in it, as an example, starts to crystallize. Anybody who's been a bartender before in a cocktail bar, you've probably at some point made a syrup or made a liqueur or made a cordial or made a sherbet, right? That starts to, over time, throw off little crystals of sugar and they gather at the bottom of your bottle, right? And that's a problem, not just because, you know, now you have a product that's not homogeneous. That's a problem, A, but B, this is no longer as sweet as it used to be because you're starting to lose sugar to the bottom of the bottle, right? An immersion circulator is a great way to reintegrate those things, right? You literally just grab that bottle, pop it into the circulator, heat the sugar up a little bit, stir it up, shake it up, and you have a reintegrated, refreshed syrup. Cinnamon syrup is a good example of this because cinnamon, as an example, doesn't degrade in terms of flavor when you heat it up. If anything, it gets better, right? So I don't know if I would want to use that technique for like a thyme syrup, right? Because I want my thyme ideally to be kind of fresh, right? Or mint syrup or basil syrup. I don't want to cook it too much, right? So, but if you're using chocolate or coffee or cinnamon or one of these sort of woodsy, earthy flavors, using this technique to reintegrate the sugar can be awesome. Do we have any more questions, Matt? How are we doing?
We have a lot of questions coming in for you. I really want to
Great.
touch back on the bag. I want to know too, do you use like BPA-free Ziploc with what you're doing?
I'm sorry?
BPA-free plastic bags? Is there a brand that I can punch in the chat for people?
I can show you what's on the box.
Yeah,
I cannot see whether or not this is BPA free. I don't know. Oh, it is not. There's no BPA in this. It literally says BPA.
That's the most important thing, right? We're trying to avoid all that toxicity, right?
I live a dangerous life, Matt.
Yeah, we're living on the edge here. We're having booze and alcohol and stuff, and of course we have to balance the two things. We don't want to go overboard, right? But that's a cool factoid, the BPA free stuff. What was the brand again?
It's Ziploc.
I'm sorry?
Ziploc.
Good old Ziploc, guys. Good old Ziploc, BPA free.
So to that point, I guess there's a huge industry in sous vide materials and immersion circulator related materials. You can buy proper sous vide bags in cases that are exorbitantly expensive. The plastic is supposed to be this crazy formulation that of course doesn't have BPA stuff, but like there's all sorts of other considerations that go into it. And they're very, very expensive. Some of these bags are like $1 a piece. It's crazy. And if you're using $1 a piece bag in a dish, and every time you make the dish, you use the bag, that dollar goes a long way to influencing your food cost, beverage cost, whatever, right? So just bear that in mind. I personally have found that applications like this, using high quality produced by Ziploc or other good quality producer of bags like this, works out really, really, really well. And using $1 or whatever piece bag for an application like this would be a waste of your resources, waste of your money. I would not recommend doing that, but whatever makes you happy, right? All right, cool.
One more question get in here. Yeah, question from Yud Hastir. Are you going to get out all the measurements of all the tests that you're making? Everybody's going to get the measurements of these tests. We have a follow-up PDF, right?
Sure. Well, so did you send around the Word document or no?
Yeah. Did everybody get the sous vide doc? I sent it out to everybody. If you didn't get it, hit up nycocktailexpo@gmail.com and I will get the document out to you like right now. This is one of the cool things about NYCE Online. Boom, boom. I get it right to you.
Yeah.
So we can do that. Hit me up in the chat and I will get it to you. But are we doing a 2.0 version, an updated thing that we'll send out to folks?
Really good. What I'll say is, this document that some of you already have received and some of you will receive was first, I made this document for a seminar very similar to this that was done in person at a beautiful bar in Astoria called Mosaic Bar. So if you're wondering who Brian Graber is, that's who he is. He's an awesome manager at Mosaic Bar. I made this for the seminar that we gave at his bar. It's beautiful. And those of you who are following along at home and are looking at this document, you'll notice that the measurements that I used in this are half of the recipes that are in this document. I didn't need to make the full batches of this, to be frank, because I'm the only one drinking these. So if we were all hanging out together, which I hope we get to do in the near future, I would have made the larger full batches of these because I'd want everybody to be able to taste them and try them, etc. But because I'm just doing this on the webinar format, I have the recipes because I just don't need all that much at home. But that is where this is all coming from. Now, I want to point out, so I'm going to pull out these infusions. You'll notice too, I didn't label them. I didn't label them for a reason because we don't need to. We'll be able to determine the differences between these very quickly. There's a lot more air in this, perceivably at least. There's a lot more air because it's expanding. That ethanol is heating up and vaporizing, right? That's a really, really, really important consideration. I want you to see the impact that heat can have on various substances, ethanol versus water, etc. Only one of them is really puffing up. I'm betting that it is the Everclear, the pure, almost pure alcohol solution. I'm pulling all of these out. They were in there for a little over 10 minutes. I now have an ice bath that I prepared ahead of time, right? Just like that, nice cold water, right? So we're gonna put our 3 bags right into the bath. And let them cool down a little bit. Great. How are we doing? Everybody following along? We're good? Cool. So these 3 bags, I'm going to give them a few minutes in the ice water just to cool down. We're going to be patient with them while we move on to our cocoa nibs. Now, this liquid is dark. I don't know if you guys can tell the difference from earlier on till now. It is dark from top to bottom as I'm looking at it. This stuff has really taken on a tremendous amount of flavor, theoretically, we're guessing, from the cocoa nibs. We're pulling a lot out of them, right? So, pardon me. Whisk, bowl. I like using a glass bowl for this because it's thick. It's a Pyrex bowl, essentially. And so it's going to hold its temperature. It's going to stay cool as we pour hot liquid into it. And I want this to stay cool. Now, give me 1 second. I'm pulling a strainer out. So we have a nice China cap strainer here and 300 grams of Demerara sugar. 300 grams of Demerara sugar. You could use muscovado. You could use turbinado, whatever makes you happy, but choose something that tastes good, right? If you're going to do this. We're now going to slice our bag open, right? And our hot 78-degree cocoa-infused brandy goes into the conical strainer, right? The chinois. Make sure that no cocoa nibs go into the bowl. Get all the liquid out and off. You can see it dripping off just like that. We start stirring. This can be tossed. Now, why are we using this particular temperature? Why are we using hot brandy that is infused with chocolate? By the way, this smells amazing. It smells delicious. Why are we using the brandy at this temperature and the sugar at this temperature in a highly insulated, thick Pyrex bowl? Somebody take a stab at this. Nobody?
Well, Cheryl says I'm drooling already.
You're doing it? You're following along at home?
She says she's drooling.
Drooling.
Yes, drooling already. I mean, I'm sorry, man, that this whole thing is super delicious.
Oh yeah, for
And
sure.
I know it. I know it is, man.
But so why are we using hot infused brandy and mixing it with Demerara sugar as opposed to using cold or room temperature brandy? Anybody answering that?
We're seeing dilute better.
Okay.
To resolve sugar better. To resolve.
Yes.
There you go. Danny Kopman said to dissolve the sugar better.
Yes. Why?
So, accolades to Danny Kopman for chiming in.
Why, Danny? Now tell us why.
Why you want it to dissolve better, or
why does that work better? Why does it work better with warm brandy as opposed to cool brandy?
Danny
right.
is saying sugar gets mixed in at warmer temperature for the super saturation, higher temperature.
If you try to take Demerara sugar, or really any sugar, and most dissolvable, aqueous dissolvable things, like sugar, salt, etc., and you try to dissolve them in a high-proof liquid, i.e. a high ethanol liquid or a high ethanol mixture, the ethanol will prevent the sugar or whatever from dissolving, right? If you take a cup of sugar and you dump it into a pint of bourbon, the sugar just sinks to the bottom. And you can stir it all you want, but it's going nowhere. If it dissolves, it's very, very, very little. You're fighting an uphill battle, right? Because at room temperature, right, sugar is not soluble in bourbon or brandy or mezcal or tequila, right? So this is what I'm saying. It's all about solubility. At a higher temperature, however, the sugar is soluble in the exact same liquid. This is a very, very important concept to think about whenever you're thinking about producing your own stuff at home. If you have a solution that simply by changing the temperature becomes more soluble for the ingredient or flavor you're looking for, you can do so much more. Usually what people do whenever they're trying to produce creme de cacao, which is exactly what we're making here, they just take simple syrup, or at best, a rich simple syrup, or rich Demerara syrup, and they add that to the spirit. But what happens whenever you add a rich simple syrup or any kind of syrup to a spirit? You're diluting it. You're adding water. I don't want to add water to this. I want this to be brandy and chocolate and really good sugar. Those three things are the only things I want to add to this. I do not want to add water. Why? Because I want to add my water, if ever, I want to add my water when I stir it or shake it. I don't want to add water to my product, right? By adding temperature, 78 degrees, right at that boiling point, that threshold of boiling point for ethanol, I'm now able to dissolve sugar directly into a liquid solution that is not habitable, that is not friendly to sugar, generally speaking. But just by eking that temperature up a little bit, we can dissolve the sugar very successfully. So at this point, I've stirred it for a little bit. Success for this is that there's no sugar left. And if there is, maybe there are like a few grains. So to evidence the point, pouring this through, we got a few grains of sugar, but not much. Most of that sugar is right in here. It's right in this rich, thick, delicious creme de cacao. So the next time you want to make a chocolate drink and you want to use exceptionally high quality cocoa nibs, chocolate, you want to use an exceptionally high quality brandy or whiskey or rum, this is the technique that allows you to get that flavor out by toasting the nibs, by circulating them with the spirit until it's all extracted. And if I'm being honest, I would prefer to circulate this for a little bit longer, but I'm aware that we're on a bit of a timeline here, so I pulled out so I could show you the technique. But if I were gonna do this for like a much larger batch or for a bar, I would circulate it for probably about 2 hours minimum. You can't go wrong for a little bit longer, but I would definitely let it go for a little bit longer. We add sugar, right? And we mix it while it is hot, getting the sugar into the spirit. Matt, you had
Camilla was saying, can we add the sugar at the beginning and allow the heat from the immersion circulator to incorporate it into the spirit?
So the answer is yes, but I wouldn't do that. And why is that? If you think about, again, solubility, what is our solvent to get the flavor of the chocolate out? Somebody tell me what the solvents are. There are two of them to get the flavor of the chocolate out here.
Giving a second for the ethanol and water, booze and water, ethanol and water.
Ethanol and water. Sugar is not typically a solvent. Sugar is going to, yes, you're right, dissolve better if we throw it in here at the beginning, but it will impede the extraction of the flavor of the cocoa. If I throw that big chunk of sugar, it was not a shy amount of sugar if you remember, it was a lot of sugar. If I throw that big chunk of sugar with kind of more or less an equal part of liquid, in this case water and ethanol and the brandy, if I throw that much sugar in with my cocoa nibs, the sugar is going to get in the way of the extraction of the flavor, of the fat, and of all the roasty, toasty, chocolatey, delicious compounds that are in the cocoa nibs. The sugar is going to get in the way of that extraction. I don't want that. So you're right. In terms of efficiency, you could totally add the sugar beforehand. If I was going to do that method, what I would do is I would strain off the brandy or bourbon or rum or whatever we're using. I would strain it off. I would add the sugar to it. Then I would put it back in the circulator and walk away for an hour or walk away for half an hour, right? That is how I would use the circulator to do the mixing for me, which would totally work. But I would not, under any circumstances, add the sweetener to the circulator for the infusion step because I don't want the sugar to impede the extraction. Does that make sense? I'm going to assume it does.
We're just letting anybody answer here in the chat. They're coming. Makes complete sense, Cheryl says. Makes sense. That's
Word
good.
up.
Hey,
Okay.
man, we have a reference PDF, so we'll get down.
So we're cool. These aren't cold and we don't need them to be because honestly, we're not really drinking these, right? But they are cool to the touch. We have now 3 separate infusions. They look different. I don't know if you guys can tell. It's maybe difficult for you to tell on your end, but they are different concentrations of color. They're different clarities. The leaves look different in each of them. They're very, very different extractions in 3 very, very, very similar sort of structures, right? Same bag, same tea, same immersion circulator, and same amount of clear liquid. The only difference is the difference between ethanol and water, right? So here, I'm grabbing 3 glasses. I'm going to grab my strainer. Cool. And I have 3 tasting straws. 1 in each cup. And again, I didn't label these, but I know that it's going to be very, very easy to tell them apart. So let's start here. No idea which one this is yet. And we're going to strain directly into this glass. Fit darn near all of it. Okay, that's number 1. This liquid is super concentrated. Let's see if we can get some light on it. It's really deep green. It looks, I think on the screen it looks kind of brown, but I assure you, in person you can see the green. It's very concentrated green, right? Number 2, this liquid is much lighter, and the leaves kind of look, I don't know, more fluffy. I don't know is the right way to say it, but they are very different from our friends in the first bag. Oops. This liquid could not be any different also. Here, check this out. I think you can probably see this, right? Totally different. Completely, totally different. And number 3. Let me ask you guys, take some bets or guesses. If this is glass number 1, this is glass number 2, and this is glass number 3, start shouting out which one you think is which. Is it water, vodka, or ethanol? Water, vodka, Everclear. What do you think?
Can you put your camera down a little bit casually so we can take a closer look at the difference?
I don't do anything casually, Matt.
I love your style.
That's right. This is when it's nice to have like a Vanna White around, you know.
Jim says first water. Ilya says first ethanol, second water.
Everybody's thinking ethanol is number 1, or is that am I incorrect? No, somebody said water was number 1.
1 is Everclear. Mark Mikal, what's up, Mark? Says 1 Everclear, 2 is water, 3 is vodka. He says sup. What was that? What are you thinking, man? Anybody got this right here? Nice.
Look how different those are, right?
Yeah, wow.
Totally different.
That's fantastic.
Completely different. And the only thing that's different here are the ratios of the solvents, right? So I'm going to taste these with the tip of a straw. You're going to have to trust me that I know the difference between pure alcohol and vodka and water. I assure you, I've done this before. I know what's what.
I trust you, man.
Woo!
I'm going to join you for this. Look at, yeah. This is in some way we're having a drink together.
Okay. Who said ethanol? Everclear. If you did,
number 1, that's Mark.
Way to go, Mark.
Mark says Everclear.
Who says water
Grain.
here?
Donna says first is grain. Alicia
Grain.
says first is Everclear.
Everclear.
Star says I'm going with Alicia.
Number 2.
I think lightest is water.
That's right. Water. Number 2. Number 3, vodka. You know, when I first made bitters, it was the first and kind of last time I made bitters back in 2008, 2009. I thought to myself, as I think a lot of people do, and it's understandable why they do, they think, oh, I'm going to make a bunch of infusions. I'm going to use vodka because it's neutral and it has a lot of alcohol. Now, raise your hand at home or whatever, comment if you'd like. If that's how you've approached bitters in past, you take what you perceive to be, and you're not wrong, high proof alcohol, and you do it, and you get the flavor, and then you blend it. The problem that I found was that I would add an ingredient, let's say tea as an example. Yep, 100 proof vodka. 100 proof vodka is still 50% water, and that's the real sort of the simple. It's so simple and it's intuitive. We know it, but it's the thing that we all have to get over. We have to challenge ourselves to rethink what we feel like we already know. We're like, we're gonna use an overproof vodka. It's gonna pull out a lot of flavor. It's gonna be neutral. It's exactly what I want for my bitters. Maybe it is. But what happens if what happened to me happens to you? And that's, you start tasting your 100 proof vodka. This isn't 100 proof, but you know, it's 40%. It's a lot of booze. I'm gonna put them in order now. High proof, middle proof, low proof, no proof, right? Just water. What happens if you taste this vodka infusion and you're like, shit, that tastes like tea, but it is so tannic. It's so bitter. That's what's happening with me right now. I'm tasting this and I'm like, gosh, I can't drink that. And even as a bitters, that much tannin isn't right. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't work well, right? I want to use tea in my bitters. I want to use tea in a liqueur, in whatever I'm making. I want to use tea in Rockies. There's green and black tea in this. How do I make sure that the result of the infusion of the tea does not have the adverse effect of excessive tannin? I don't mind bitterness, but if it's unpleasantly tannic, that maybe isn't what I'm going for, right? So then I'm like pondering, I'm sitting, I'm thinking to myself, I'm scratching my head. I'm like, how do I avoid this? How do I fix this? And then I thought to myself, well, where's the tannin coming from? What's pulling it out? What is the solvent that is ripping the tannin out of the tea? Somebody type it in the chat. Somebody type in the chat. What is, okay, water. Exactly. Water is what makes the tannin come out of the tea. That's why whenever we take this same tea, right, and we use only water in a quote unquote traditional tea steeping manner, it can oversteep. It can become tannic and unpleasant, right? It's not a pleasant experience drinking oversteeped tea because it's very tannic and very bitter, right? If we increase the amount of ethanol in our infusion, right, in our extraction as our solvent, the tannin is no longer going to follow the water because there isn't any water. That's why the high proof pure ethanol Everclear has no tannin. This is hot. Man, it burns. It's hot. Drinking this would not be a good idea, right? Before operating heavy machinery. But you know what? There's zero tannin. It is clean. It tastes just like the cleanest, lightest, freshest, greenest tea. And also, not for nothing, you can see it. How much more flavor we get, right? How much more color, how much more flavor. All the things that we want come out with the Everclear, and none of the things that we're trying to avoid. That's why considering solubility is so deeply crucial to being able to operate in a bar environment if you're trying to do progressive, thoughtful, inventive, house-made things, right? If you're just opening up bottles and making kick-ass cocktails, then you don't have to worry about this. But if you're trying to work to build your own products, your own liqueurs, your own spirits, your own infusions, etc., really give thought to solubility and infusion and temperature, because this experiment, I hope visually alone, illustrates the massive difference in just altering the solvents that are used in this process, right? Now, but there's more. So
quick, man, there's a few questions really on this point. If you want to, Mark has a follow-up for you. If you want to chime in, you can see the chat.
It's hard for me to see it where I'm standing.
Okay, I got you. Yeah, well, he's basically saying, so is the Everclear tea pleasant, so to speak?
One more time.
So is the Everclear tea pleasant, so to speak?
Yes. It's just too boozy. Now, let's talk about how to fix that problem, right? Because I don't want to make a gimlet using Everclear that's been infused with gin. It's like, it's too much alcohol. It's too hot. That's not cool, right? So how do we solve that problem? Well, we know the exact proof of the Everclear, right? We know that printed on the bottle, it is 190 proof, right? 95% alcohol, right? So I did some math ahead of time, and there's actually a very simple, it's in Excel, I built it myself. If you'd like, Matt, remind me and I can send it over if it'd be helpful to anybody who's interested, who's on this call. I have a very basic ABV, alcohol by volume calculator that allows you to type in your proof of spirit or proof of solvent, right? If you're using brandy, it's very different from Everclear. It's very different from wine or vermouth, right? You can type in the proof. You can type in the grams, the amount that you're using. You can type in the proof of the ingredient you're infusing. If it's liquid, that's very important because it's going to dilute the proof, right? In this case, we're not getting a whole lot of any dilution from the tea because we've strained it out, right? The amount of dilution that the tea is giving here is very, very small. And then you can set the exact percentage that you want your spirit to come out. So if you want a 20% liqueur, no problem, plug it in. If you want a 40% base spirit, which is what I want this to be, then we're adding water. This is called proofing down, right? If we were at a distillery and we were taking our barrel proof bourbon or rye, and we were going to add water to bring it down to 40 or 41 or 42.5, whatever our house style is, this is what we would be doing right now. We're adding water to hit a desired proof that we have predetermined in the process, right? I want this to be 40% alcohol, right? So I'm going to turn on my scale, right? Just like that. I'm going to take our tea infused Everclear, super, super green. You can't see it on your end. I'm sorry for that, but it's really green. Whenever it's pouring down the side of the glass, it's very green. Really, really captures that fresh sencha color, as opposed to these guys where we're kind of brown, kind of dilute, not as much as we want, and a lot of tannin. The vodka is very, very tannic. It's not what we're looking for. It's because there's a lot of water there, right? So, okay.
Eamon, I want to cut in. So many people are interested in this calculator of yours.
Yeah.
In class with a lot of people, you can lose a thing or two. I just want to make sure people can get a hold of that. Where can you where can they get the calculator again? Please repeat it, or I'll type it in the chat.
Yeah, just remind me after this, and I'll send it to you. It's just a very simple ABV calculator.
So guys, we're in touch. You know, you received an email. You're connected to me as well. Feel free to write to me. It was mattcorey@gmail.com. Tell me you want the calculator. We will connect. No doubt. I got you guys. Cheers.
So see that? How green that is? Really pretty, right? This is a little cloudy. This happens all the time. It happens when I make Rockies also, which we should talk about at some point. When you add water to a solution that has oil and it has soluble, flavor and elements and blah, 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 all the things, tannins, all the things that are here, when you add water to it quickly, which is exactly what I just did, it often results in a bit of clouding, a bit of opacity at first, which usually dissipates over time, over a day, like overnight. So if I were doing this for a bar, I would do this process the day before I wanted to use it in my drink because I want it to be nice and clear and shiny and bright, right? But you can still see this thing is green, right? How beautiful is that? Super green. It's so concentrated. I added water to bring it down to 40% alcohol or 80 proof, right? So now what have we made? What have we made? Somebody tell me what we've made. We've made green tea. I'm gonna wait because I know somebody's gonna say it. Yes, thank you, Mark. Exactly. We have made our own, from scratch, reverse engineered green tea vodka. And that is something I never thought 5 years ago I would get so excited about saying, but it's true because we're cognizant of solubility and extraction temperatures and the way that we're trying to pull out the things we want and not the things we don't want. We've been able to reverse engineer green tea vodka that tastes like the sencha tea. It is green and beautiful and fresh, right? But because we removed the tea before we added the water, we avoided a water extraction of the tannic bitter things we don't want. And we have reverse engineered exactly what we do. A beautiful, bright, refreshing green tea vodka. Cool, huh? I think this is cool. Do you guys think it's cool? That's awesome. Thanks, Mark. Okay. So I think we should make a drink. We haven't done that yet. We should make a drink. First, I want to tell you about this stuff. So I ran bars and restaurants for a long time. I know Matt gave me a little bit of a bio, but my background is restaurants and bars and hospitality, and sort of getting my hands dirty and creating things, right? Making my own creme de cacao, making my own Irish cream, making my own Swedish punch, making my own gin, using a rotovap sometimes and sometimes just time, using immersion circulators, blah, 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 clarifications, whole 9 yards. But I got really excited about making liqueurs for a long time. I still am. Clearly, we just made creme de cacao, which is wonderful and delicious. Will be consumed over Christmas for sure. But then I started sort of dabbling in other styles of liqueurs. And at my last restaurant, it was called Bethany on 57th Street. I hope some of you got to join us. I made something. It was a liqueur that was very low proof. It was usually a seasonal blend of fruits and tea and citrus and spirits. And it was lightly sweet. You could drink it on its own, but it was really designed to be mixed with other things, right? You can mix it with whatever you want. You can mix it with vodka, gin, tequila, bourbon, champagne, even soda water, even just like seltzer and a twist. Super refreshing, really light, really delicious. And it became so important to the restaurant. It became so important to me because I was able to craft something from scratch that was awesome and delicious and was available only at my bar. But at the same time, it allowed people the opportunity to choose what they wanted to drink it with. And so they could drink it with their brand of tequila or their brand of whiskey or their brand of Prosecco or whatever they like. And it took off. It really made a big difference in the restaurant. We became known for it. So a few years ago, I thought to myself, it would be really cool to be able to bottle this and provide it to people so they can bring this experience home and so they can use it in their bars as a modifier in cocktails. And that's really what Rocky's is. This is a spirit that I make myself. I brought it to market about 2 years ago. I make it in Brooklyn. It is a natural liqueur, a natural blend of green tea, black tea, green apple, pineapple, lemon, lime, and orange. So a few kinds of citrus, but mostly lemon. And I stabilize it with a small amount of neutral American grain spirit. It is Rocky's Botanical Liqueur. Thank you very much, New York Cocktail Expo. The stuff is delicious. I make it myself. It's a local product if you're in New York, and it's an American product, one that tells, for me, a really great story of my trajectory as a chef and as a restaurateur, as a bar professional, and now as a spirits producer. If any of you have it at home, please give a shout out. I would love that. And if you don't have it at home, I would be honored if you would try it. It's a labor of love. You're looking at the whole team. So I want to spread the gospel on this in a big way. And the idea is that it's delicious, again, by itself. Now, cheers you all, and thank you for letting me invade your homes and your evenings tonight. But it's really designed to accompany other spirits, right? I could take this and add some of our green tea vodka, and it would be wonderful. I'm actually going to use this kind of as a co-base to produce a gimlet of sorts, right? So, and this is delicious. So I'm going to go 1.5 ounces of our beautiful green tea vodka, 1.5 ounces of Rocky's liqueur. I will give a shout out to my friend April Watchell of Cheeky Drinks. Any of you who are making cocktails at home and don't have time to make your own ginger syrup or juice a bunch of lemons and limes and stuff. Wow, this top is on so tight. Use Cheeky. Go to cheekydrinks.com, I think is what her name is, or Cheeky Cocktails. Oh my God, I'm being made a fool of by this bottle. Terrible. There we go. So she can and will provide you with these beautiful little bottles of simple and agave and ginger, lemon, lime, orange, whatever you're looking for, the essentials that you need to complement the spirits of your bar. I just did like 1/4 ounce of simple. I have a little bit of sweet too, so, but it's not necessary if you don't want to. I'm going with 1/2 ounce of Cheeky's freshly squeezed lime juice. And we're going to, I think I'm going to pour this into a wine glass. We normally do this in a martini glass or a coupe, but I think for the sake of this might give us a bit more of a showcase for the color of the cocktail. Okay. Okay. Let's see. we have a light green tea, Rocky's Gimlet. It's delicious. I'm really curious what it's going to be like with a colorful gin, because we're already playing with the green spirit. So let's try it with Empress. Those of you who know Empress, you'll know it's a butterfly pea flower infused gin. The color is all natural. It's really tasty stuff. My friend, most importantly, my friend Tracy Eden represents Empress. So let's now whip up a gimlet using a blend of her gin and our green tea vodka, right? So we're going split base on that, 3/4 ounce each of the vodka and the gin. Ooh, it's a cool color. And sticking with that little tiny splash, not much, of simple, and 1/2 ounce of freshly juiced lime, just like so. I saved this because I'm on a soapbox currently for using citrus peels for not just juicing and throwing them away, right? I believe citrus peels, after they're juiced, should, at least some of them, save them and shake your sours with them. Daiquiris, margaritas, etc., shaken with gimlets, shaken with the rind of the citrus, actually lends a lot more flavor and character, right? This gimlet, will taste better for the addition of that peel. You get a lot of the oil that was pushed out when you juiced it. Don't throw it away. It's a waste of delicious flavor. Okay, so now, glass number 2, Empress, green tea, vodka, Rockies, a tiny bit of sugar and fresh lime juice, shaken with the peel of the citrus. It's almost like the color of an aviation cocktail. It's beautiful. Almost like a lavender color, you know?
That's great.
Really pretty.
Yeah.
So here you have it. Pure green tea vodka, nice bright cream color. Here we have Empress Gin, split base gimlet, that has this gorgeous sort of like, I don't know, smoky purple color, really beautiful. And gin just makes everything taste better. Thank you. So shout out to Empress, shout out to Tracy. Thank you, Matt Curry, for having me for this 2020 edition of the New York Cocktail Expo online webinar platform. Please, to all of you who stuck around, do give a look into trying to bottle Rockies. It would be a great pleasure to bring some joy to your home this Christmas season. And please, if there's any questions, I'm happy to field them now. If there are any more.
Doing a Q&A. Are you cool hanging with us and just answering some of our questions? Because I've got a bunch here in the Q&A for you. I know people are very curious. I mean, this is like an eye-opening webinar, right? And once I took your class, you know me, I was delving into wellness drinks, and we're going to get into that in 2021. But really, to make all these different infusions and flavors and retaining beautiful colors and the solvents, the whole main thing you're trying to drive home is solubility of this class.
That's right.
Solubility.
How you get flavor. And actually, this is a good thing to finish on with regard to solubility specifically. Here, so I saved our teas. So let's see if this carries across the internet.
Yeah, no, it does, man. I'm definitely feeling it. I'm right here with you. Huh?
You hear this?
Yeah.
So this is where this is the sound of the ethanol infused tea, or the tea that was placed in an ethanol solution, right?
Okay.
Now, what I'm trying to illustrate here, check this out. This is the bag that had the tea with the water. Nothing.
Wow. Wow, I love this. I love this. This is great.
Well, that's because this tea hydrated. The water permeated the tea and it's now a soft leaf, right? Here,
right.
no hydration. It looks like it's floating in water, but it's not. It's floating in alcohol.
Yeah.
You take a bag of potato chips, dump it into a jar filled with ethanol, come back a month later, spit out the chips, and they're still going to be crispy. You know what I'm saying? They don't hydrate. They
Right.
because there's no water
Right.
to hydrate them and make them soft. So they remain like little chips. This is still, it's crisp and brittle. It's super, super, super neat.
It's just, it makes you think about what am I going to add with this particular thing, and the outcome will be completely different. One is hydration with the water and the effect that you're getting, whether it's an infusion or a different type of extraction, whatever. The solubility of water is going to be different than the solubility when you're working with ethanol. Right? And everybody gets a repertoire down. You become comfortable with ingredients you like working with and solvents you like working with. And you know what, this might be a good transition into a question. Somebody was talking about, do you like using this method to do a fat wash? Is it something you like doing to do a fat wash? Because I love doing fat washes. So is that, are you down with that?
I love fat washes for the right application. I think sometimes people do fat washes so they can print them on the menu. You know, fat wash this, fat wash that. It's like, okay, cool. But like, was that the best way to get flavor into that thing? You know, like whenever I see like coconut fat wash this, I'm like, coconut fat doesn't have a whole lot of flavor. It tastes kind of like something, but not a whole lot. Well, and so you take rum and you whip it in with like melted coconut fat, and then you freeze it.
Yeah.
Pour it off, and you have now your coconut fat washed rum. It doesn't taste much like coconut. It's not an effective use of that technique.
Do you like using toasted chips? Do you like using the sous vide method to infuse flavor, or to do a fat wash? If you're using butter, if you're using ghee, if you're using oil, just saying, I want to break down a certain fat that's going to be more soluble in less time.
Right.
A rapid version. Is there any benefit to using sous vide to do a fat wash versus the traditional method of out on the shelf 8 hours, in the freezer 24, and then straining it? Is this sous vide better for this?
So yes and no. You don't have to use the sous vide technique to do fat washing, right? The most famous fat wash cocktail, I think, in history is probably one of the earliest ones. It's called the Benton's Old Fashioned. It was made famous on the menu of PDT, where they took Benton's bacon, right? Newski's bacon, and they rendered it, right? They rendered it, and they got all the crispy, delicious little drippings of the bacon. They strained off the bacon, kept the bacon drippings, right?
Yes.
Dumped in a bottle of bourbon, mixed it up, let it marinate for a little while, threw it into the freezer. The fat congeals, goes to the top. The bourbon sinks to the bottom because the fat floats on top of the bourbon. You poke a little hole in the fat, and then you pour off the infused bourbon, and it tastes like magically like bacon, right? But there's no fat left in it. It's all left in the container, in the fat, right? In the globs of fat.
And people cook with this. And those who are into sustainability, once again, you can use this for infusing fats, right? Which is a cool method that one, you have off as a chef, you're using fats to cook with. And then two, you have your yes and no. You have something to say about that? Is it not a good method for
remember, though, the fat is not getting nearly as much flavor from the liquid as the liquid is from the fat.
Right.
Right. So I'm not saying you're wrong, but like the thing that's really winning here is the bourbon. The bourbon's getting all the bacon. The bacon, the bacon fat isn't getting much bourbon. It doesn't really taste a ton like bourbon. So I'm not saying you couldn't use the fat for something else, but maybe not a ton. For anybody who's interested in fat washing technique, there's a fun video that I did a few years ago with GQ Magazine. So if you go to YouTube and you type in foie gras flip, FOIE GRAS FLIP, it should come up. The restaurant was called Bettany. It was my last restaurant. And we did a fat wash cocktail it's one of my favorites because it uses multiple techniques for infusion, including an immersion circulator, including what most people would call a sous vide technique, to extract as much flavor from the foie gras as possible after rendering it on the stove, right? And then we infuse it with rum. We make a flip out of it. So it's like, I think we use like Eldorado 12 or something. So it's like this rich, dark brown sugar rum infused with this fatty, rich, caramelized duck liver, goose liver, or whatever you got for the foie gras, and then we do the fat wash, and we use that with a whole egg to sort of return the fat to the drink. So you're having this luxurious experience of eating foie gras and drinking a flip, and it's just so much fun. It's so good. And the video shows every step of the way. So if you don't know how to execute fat washing properly, check it out. It's a really, really good basic tutorial. And it was a ton of fun making the video. Ton of fun. So, for me, when we speak about infusions and fat washing, etc., like fat washing is awesome. Cooking with immersion circulators, awesome. Doing milk clarifications is awesome. All these things are great, but make sure that the tool you're using, the technique that you're applying makes sense for the product you're trying to create. If you just want to create a fat wash cocktail and you just grab the nearest fat and you wash the nearest spirit, that doesn't make it good. You know what I'm saying? Like whenever I look at menus and I'm like, fat wash this, clarified that, infused this, carbonated that, I'm like, but why did you do it? What were you trying to achieve? If it didn't make sense for the technique, don't do it. Make sure you apply a technique where it's going to benefit the flavor profile, the color profile, the aromatic profile of the drink.
Yeah, man, look, we got a lot of comments coming in. I want to give a shout out to Danny, Cheyenne, Dan, Alicia, Cheryl. There's a lot of questions coming in. I want to get to all of them. Do you mind if I want to start at the top? And this is our Q&A session with you, man. We have time with you. This is so special. Cheers to you. We're coming.
How many people are left?
Man, we've got 34 people. There's a full class of folks that want to hang out with us. So thank you guys for hanging. This is our question time. The name of this class is Sous Vide Cocktails at Home. It's going to be recorded. We're going to have it available at nycocktailexpo.com, but we've got Eamon live now, so we're asking questions. So a few questions were answered along the way. Somebody said using mason jars as opposed to a plastic bag. Silicone bag.
And if you seal it and you accidentally let it get too hot, it will explode. It will break and it will hurt you. So just be careful.
Yeah, right. You do have to be careful with sous vide. There's some things that can go wrong, right? Are there any like extreme quick bullet points you could tell us of don't do's with sous vide that are going to go wrong? Just a quick
kind of. I mean, I think I've already covered. I don't want to keep that horse. If you're using a sealed container, just make sure that what you're putting in that container is not going to expand so much that it's going to explode in your bath. That would suck. It'd be terrible.
Right on. John and Chundi is asking, a very common question with sous vide is certain things. How long do you usually let the liquid sit in the bath infusing? Does it depend on the materials? Is there a quick, best guideline?
So, okay. So I divide things into three basic groups. There's certainly room for many more than that, but there are three basic groups I divide ingredients and infusions into with regard to immersion, circulator, infusions. And I try to keep myself from saying sous vide because this isn't sous vide. We've already established that it's not sous vide. We are not using a vacuum chamber. This is immersion, circulator, infusion, immersion, circulator, cooking, right? This is not sous vide, technically. The three categories are sort of, for lack of a better word, chunky, dense, dry things, right? Cocoa nibs. They're woody, they're thick, they're very coarse, right? It's going to take some coaxing and some time to get the flavor we're looking for out of these things.
Right.
Cola nut. Anybody on this Zoom with us that is into trying new cool things and wants to have a mind-blowing experience without taking drugs, try cola nut. Cola nut is so much fun. It's just the most
What's the spelling on that?
K-O-A-L. Sorry, K-O-L-A. I know how to spell it. So K-O-L-A, cola nut. It's the stuff that Coca-Cola, Pepsi-Cola, Tab, whatever, colas used to use as their caffeination and sort of deep, dark, rich, complex flavor profile ingredients. I don't think that cola nut comes anywhere near most commercial sodas these days, but maybe Boylan's, I don't know. But cola nut is amazing. It's amazing. Actually, the pods kind of look like cacao pods, like chocolate pods, when you get them fresh. And it's very rare that you get them, but sometimes you can find fresh cola nut. You get it out of the pod, you tear it open, and then it's like perfectly white teeth. It's like a game show host's teeth. They're perfectly white and beautiful and pristine. And then you scratch one, like the tiniest bit, you scratch one, and then immediately before your eyes turns deep, dark brown. It's crazy. It oxidizes so quickly. The way you usually find kola nut is it's been cut and sifted. That's what you should be looking for if you're going to do what I hope you all do and go find some. Go on Amazon and find cut and sifted kola nut. They'll be dry, deep, rich, dark brown. It looks like wood chips. But when you smell it, it's spicy and complex. And then what you do is you do the exact same thing as I did with the cocoa nibs. Put them into an oven, toast them, get them hot and aromatic. Your whole kitchen will smell just like really exotic and spicy and cool. And then do the infusion, right? Do the infusion with water or alcohol or whatever you want, right? I usually do my kola nut infusions in water because I like using the syrup as a non-alcoholic complement to all sorts of things. So if I want, I can make a non-alcoholic cocktail for somebody, you know, a friend that doesn't drink or a kid or whatever, right? I have versatility of the syrup, right? And the compounds that I'm looking to extract are water soluble, right? So I don't necessarily need to have alcohol in it, right? So the point is, extract with whatever you want the flavors of the kola nut, and you'll just be blown away at how damn delicious it is. It is so, so good. It's not expensive. It's just something that most people don't even know about, right? So check it out. Don't get kola nut powder because then you'll just make mud. You know what I'm saying? Like you'll just try to cook it and it'll just get weird and gloppy. You can't strain it out, right? So get cut and sifted kola nut, and it's delicious. You'll like it very much.
This is why, listen, man, I've been doing this expo, you know, since 2015. And part of the whole experience for me is I am like an audience member. I get to learn about all this cool stuff, and, you know, my back bar just changes, and it's just like makes things so much cooler, especially now, right? And I'm so glad we can connect. I got more questions for you. I want to get through them. We still have 31 folks hanging with us. So I'm going to get to everyone. Cheryl, Danny's got more questions. Alicia, you guys have more questions, and here I'll go through the chat as well. So let's take a look at that. So what is the best resource? Do you have a resource to find solubility temperatures of different ingredients? Is there's like an Ultra Nerds website of just like the essential?
Sure.
Because, you know, that'd be a good quick start for people, I'm sure. Is there a resource or a website or a guide that you have? Thanks so much.
So
thank you for your question.
Some of it's sort of somewhat intuitive. And what I mean by that is, what is the solubility temperature for cocoa fat, right? Cocoa butter, the stuff that we use to make this now delicious, dark, rich creme de cacao, right? You guys, again, remember how light this brandy was, you know, a little while ago. Now it's dark and rich and it's so much chocolate flavor, right? So I thought to myself, you know, what temperature does cocoa butter melt at? What is the melting temperature for cocoa butter? And I said to myself, if I can get my liquid to the melting temperature of cocoa butter, then it should be fluid enough that it flows out into my spirit. And I found that just simply through doing this process, that it works, right? I get a really rich, robust, dark, intense, complex creme de cacao when I do it this way, right? So I guess the roundabout answer to your question is, you know, if you know what you're trying to achieve, if you know what you're trying to extract, start looking at the melting temperatures of them, if they're fats and oils especially. Because like butter is solid at room temperature, but you heat that thing up a little bit and is all of a sudden a liquid, and it's much more available, right? And the water that is suspended in the butter also becomes available, right? So look at melting temperatures first and foremost. Depending on the process you're doing, you could also look at smoking points and burning points, but that's certainly not something that applies so much to this technique. But I guess the takeaway is, if you're looking for the temperature at which something becomes available and soluble, look at the temperature that it changes state. Look at the temperature it goes from a solid to a liquid, or from a liquid to a gas. Those points of temperature, those temperature points that it changes state, are often the point at which it becomes available to a spirit, to a solvent, to water, to acid, to whatever the solvent is. Does that make sense?
Yeah, buddy. No, I'm glad this is my third time taking the course, because it's starting to become internalized, you know? It really is.
Yeah.
I got my Sous Vide for years. I love Sous Vide. I love immersion circulation. Let me readapt my language to what you're saying, because that's important, right? I do have a vacuum sealer. Is there a time? Is there a time when I should be using it, like for this application, or can
Not
I?
for what we're doing. You
Okay.
know, so ROP, reduced oxygen packaging, it can be important depending on what you're trying to achieve. If you're storing foods over an extended period of time, whether it's refrigerated or frozen or whatever, like, it can be important to get as much air out of that package as possible.
Yeah. Right.
But you know, for what we were doing, everything that we executed happened within a couple of hours. You know what I'm saying? So
That's wonderful.
yeah, so getting a vacuum sealer involved in these processes, not so important.
But you know what,
But
dude?
if you were going to have like a proper asset program at
Yeah.
a restaurant or at a bar, and have like an immersion circulator with a proper vacuum sealer and all these things, and you were planning on sealing food or drinks or whatever for extended periods of time for various reasons, yeah, you would want to have the vacuum sealer. But nothing that we're doing right now requires that.
That's amazing. Dude, this is awesome. I was, don't be intimidated by Sous Vide. It's been around for a long time. Most people have them in the home now, right? The machines, as they're marketed as Sous Vide machines. I want to ask you a really important question. I've got a bunch of other questions we're going to get to. We still have you guys for a few more minutes. Thanks for hanging on. Thanks for being a part of NY Cocktail Expo Online Week. Eamon, thanks for being with us. So, Cheryl is saying, I'm wondering if Eamon does any other online teaching, because I'm totally geeking out on this science. I can imagine everyone hanging out is probably in that field too. So we're doing other classes, right? This Monday, you're doing an aged spirit. So imagine doing some of the technique you're doing, the layers of flavors with that, with aged spirits, with taking all the knowledge collectively and implementing it. Tell us about that class that's happening on December 7th at 6th with La Panta.
Yeah, this class is a collaboration between Gonzalez Bayas Sherry's. They do incredible Fino, Manzanilla, Palo Cortado, or Oloroso sherries, classic sherries. And then recently, they started producing exceptional distillates of those sherries. And that's really interesting. And they also started producing relatively recently vermouths from those sherries. And man, I got to tell you, I don't work for the company. I'm not involved in it in any way. I get nothing for giving them compliments at all. They are exceptionally good vermouths. Like my like house go-to vermouth, both sweet and dry at this point. I'm torn on the dry because I like Molly Pratt so much, but like they are like amongst my go-to vermouths. Before a lot of other very popular, very good vermouths, they're worth seeking out. If you like making Manhattans, especially if you like making Manhattans or Negronis, seek out Gonzalez Bayas La Copa Sweet Vermouth. They're exceptionally good. So we did a seminar with them. It went really well, I think. And so they asked if I would again participate in a seminar, a webinar, with not just their sherries and their vermouths, but also their high-proof sherry distillates. So that's exactly what we're going to do. I am looking forward to making a bunch of drinks. Instead of teaching most of the material, there's a gentleman named Alvaro Plata, who is a Spaniard who is intimately familiar with the sherries and vermouths and distillates. He'll be really leading the background and the tastings and sort of like storytelling of the spirits, and I'll be making drinks with them. So sort of the shoe will be on the other foot to a degree, or maybe I'll only be wearing one shoe that night. Something
right,
like
awesome. Yeah, one shoe. You can wear no shoes.
I'm wearing no shoes right now.
Listen, I'm an introvert, extrovert. This is interesting. Like, we're all hanging out. Everybody's asking questions. I'm feeling it, dude. I'm definitely like, I was putting chocolate bitters in my drink because I just was like, yo, don't forget about your senses, right? At least we can see each other's faces, and it's so nice everyone's with us tonight. So let's get to some more questions. What about a class on fat washing? Are we going to do a clear cocktails class with Rockies? Because I've had Rockies. Eamon's
that.
Eamon's been with us from the beginning. He's our executive judge. He's a New York Cocktail Expo educator. We try to make this really robust learning for you guys. I think that for a while I was going to classes and realized they were really just brand driven, but I wanted to learn, and you and I connected on that. And also our focus on hospitality and how that does everything on bringing everyone together, and it has a lot of great results. So clear cocktails, fat washing classes. What do we got lined up in the future? Is that on your mind?
Well, I mean, those are two different classes. Those are big time, two different classes. And so yeah, I'm happy to do both and either of those classes. They're both areas that I'm really sort of passionate about, and I've done a lot of both of them. So yeah,
I think folks want to know if they can make a really classy, savory martini where they have drained and extracted fat from pepperoni, and they fat wash that, and they get a delicious martini out of it. People want to know these things, man. Everybody on here is like that. So
I lie awake I'm wondering about pepperoni infused martinis every day. Like it's just like
it's the thing that has a lot of fennel in there. If you guys like anise, what is the shelf life of the creme de cacao?
Indefinite. What will happen though, because there's so much fat, and alcohol get along great, relatively speaking. So many of you, for a quick sidebar for this purpose, many of you are perhaps familiar with like anisette or ouzo or sambuca or absinthe, maybe the most famous of the anise liqueurs, right? And anise distillates. Nothing to do with sugar content, everything to do with alcohol content and fat solubility in alcohol, right? So we have booze, we have fat that comes from fennel seed and star anise, etc. We have fats that come out of those seeds and we get them into the alcohol, right? If you take that spirit, that finished spirit, whether it's Ricard, Pernod, absinthe, etc., and you start slowly adding water, as you would if you were doing a traditional absinthe drip, there's a single point, one single specific, very, very, very fine-tuned point at which one more drop of water will turn the whole thing cloudy. It's a process called louching, right? Louching, louching. And so whenever you hit that tipping point, when just enough water has been added to the alcoholic spirit, it will immediately turn the whole glass cloudy. It's like a magic trick. It's so cool. And I bring this up because what you're essentially doing is you're pulling the fats, the suspended fats, out of solution, and you're causing them to essentially crystallize in a way and to precipitate out of the suspended alcohol solution. I bring this up because here we have quite a bit of alcohol, we have quite a bit of water, all of this fat and all of this sugar now, because we added demerara sugar, remember, is now floating around in suspension in this creme de cacao. If I'm, a ding dong, and I put this into my refrigerator, what will likely happen is the next day or the next 2 days or so, slowly the fat and slowly the sugar will start to precipitate and fall out of solution with the water and ethanol. And I'll get these globs of fat at the top. I'll get these chunks of sugar, delicious sugar, at the bottom of my creme de cacao. But that's not what I want. I want those fat and sugar globules to be in the creme de cacao. So what do I do to fix this? I take this container and I put it into my immersion circulator. I just let it bob around for like an hour and a half, maybe an hour. And I come back when it's nice and hot, and I give it a good stir, and all of that fat and all of that sugar will reintegrate into the creme de cacao. So that, again, is something that is very useful with this tool. And when it comes to solubility, when it comes to fat washing, when it comes to sort of like thinking about how these compounds can all hang out together in peace, these time, temperature, and proof considerations are very, very important. They're all related to each other.
Yeah, buddy, you and I have talked about this. Yeah, it's important. Do we have you for a little while longer? Well, we're at 7:58. We got a lot of questions still. We still have 29 folks with us. If you're hanging, I'm hanging, buddy.
Hey, listen, if I have to make one request. Can I make one request?
Eamon, of course.
Thank you.
I'm so thankful you're here.
Can you please, and I'd like to encourage everyone on this call, I'd love to stay in touch. And the best way for us to stay in touch and for me to show you kind of what's going on and to keep you in the loop is, and I hate to say this, but it's true, but it's via Instagram. Would you mind, because I can't reach my typing mechanism, my keyboard.
Yeah, buddy.
Can you type Rocky's Milk Punch into the thing with the at? Yeah. You know how to spell Rocky's, right?
Who's watching that's on Instagram right now?
Yeah, right? Everybody. I know everybody.
Already following you, Cheryl's
Thanks,
following.
Cheryl.
She's following you. What's up, Cheryl? She's been hanging. Sharon showing love. Cheryl
That's
showing love at Rocky's Milk Punch.
Thank you.
You-
Please stay in touch. If you DM, I will get back to you very quickly. And like I try to put all the special cool hotness on there. You know, we did a giveaway. We did a giveaway, but also we talked about the release of our anniversary bottling from 2 years ago on the site. It's available only at one store in New York. It's incredible stuff. I think they only have like 7 bottles left. And it's just amazing. It'll never be available again. You know, so things like that, I try to get people excited about, let them know what we're doing. Obviously, you know, talks like these, webinars like these, we talk about as well. So please jump on there, stay in touch, and that's my only request. So with that said, what's our next question?
We got it. This is one I've asked you myself. Can gum Arabic fix sugar crystallization? Is that a general rule or only some?
Can gum Arabic fix sugar crystallization?
Danny, yeah. Gum Arabic fix crystallization. Sugar
Sure.
crystallization.
So gums in general, whether it's guar gum or xanthan gum or gum Arabic, etc., they do help to inhibit. They're hydrocolloids. They help to inhibit crystals forming in your syrups, etc. But that's, from my perspective, not their primary role. You know, if you were making baked goods or if you're making candy, you know, where you have a high concentration of sugar, high concentration of all sorts of other stuff, add gum Arabic, and that can help to keep the texture pliable and soft and really tasty. But when you're making syrups and liqueurs and things of that nature, that's not really gum Arabic's role. Gum Arabic's role is, however, about creating texture. And a lot of people think, because gum syrup, especially when it comes to cocktails like the pisco sour, people add gum Arabic to pisco sours, and they think that the gum Arabic is going to make egg white very fluffy and very light. That is the farthest thing from the truth. Actually, it diminishes the foam. It makes the foam less pronounced, and that's okay, because if you do a good job of making the drink, if you shake it properly, you diminish it a tiny bit. But what the gum Arabic does, it interacts with the protein, the albumin in the egg white, and it makes it like a meringue. It's amazing. Gum Arabic is one of my favorite. In fact, if enough people on this class are interested, we can incorporate gum Arabic into some future class, because gum Arabic is one of my favorite things to make. It was one of the hardest things to figure out how to standardize, because it clumps and it gets so weird and gluey and gross so easily. But
I love that you said a gum Arabic is one of the different that I make. This is why I love you, and this is what I'm getting into you, because you're making gum Arabic.
Well, gum Arabic syrup's tough, because if you just try to assemble the necessary ingredients, if you're just making plain gum Arabic syrup and you're making like sugar, water, gum Arabic, that's it. If you try to just bring it all together, it gets clumpy, it gets weird. It's super gross. It's slimy. It's very challenging, right? But I figured out a pretty simple method to be able to produce consistent, silky, clean, smooth gum Arabic syrup. And it's just about the way that you assemble the ingredients, right? But it's very important to do it in a specific, exact way. And that is one of my favorite ingredients. Who
we've talked about
Peruvian restaurants that make pisco sours, any restaurant that makes pisco sours, and they're not using gum Arabic, I'm like, I wish you would, because it's worth it. It changes the drink so much.
But without affecting the authenticity of the flavor that you're going for with texture or oversaturation or anything else. That's
well, again though, gum syrup is in those cocktails. So we're now screwing them up by not using it. You understand what I'm saying? Like whenever you look at an old cocktail book and it says gum syrup, the reason it says gum syrup is because gum Arabic is supposed to be there, right? And we are now just substituting gum Arabic with simple syrup, which is not the same thing. It would be like, I don't know.
No.
It would be like,
I mean, that's silly. I mean, that's quite a contrast, I believe. If
right.
you know the two substances, right? The components. So I've got a question. What's up, Jose Beltran? How you doing? Thank you so much for tuning in. And this is a popular ingredient. Everybody loves to talk about it. It's one of my favorite ingredients to make, and to make different variations of it. Everybody has a cool recipe or brand that they like. Is this method help expedite in the making of orgeat? If so, is there a recommended process using this process? So great question. Thank you, Jose. Cheers to you.
I assume we're talking about immersion circulator technique?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, if I'm mistaken, Jose, let me know. But yeah, I believe so. Yeah. And
So
I would love to hear it.
I like using this technique very much for orgeat, and I always use a sealed bag for this because it means that all of the aromatics of the almonds that I use stay in the bag. Normally, whenever people make orgeat, they're taking almonds and maybe some combination of other ingredients, and then they're just simmering them on a stove top. They're essentially making like an almond stock, right? Whereas nothing wrong with that. It's delicious. But they're losing a ton of aromatics just to the air, man. They're just boiling off, right? So I like using this because it keeps everything contained. And you also don't have to worry about evaporation or loss of water content, or if you're using alcohol as a solvent, alcohol content is also lost, right? If you have an open container. So I do like using immersion circulators to produce orgeat. It is something that can help to dial in consistency in a big way with this technique. That said, my major bone to pick with orgeat is that orgeat for me should be white. It should look creamy white. If you're making orgeat and you're toasting the hell out of your almonds, or you're making orgeat and you're leaving the skins on the almonds, you're gonna end up with a brown orgeat. And look, I don't think that, color and aesthetics should come and proceed before flavor. I think flavor is definitely more important, but I do think that orgeat should be white. It is a clean, white, clean, white, silky liquid that is, full of the flavor of almonds. So that's number one. Number two, the best flavor profile I've ever gotten from orgeat, and I've made a lot of orgeat, is using bitter almond seeds. Bitter almond seeds are actually not even almonds. They are the kernels from stone fruits, from plums, apricots, peaches, etc. Whenever you crack that very hard pit open, you open it up, there's a little seed on the inside that looks identical to a small almond. And if you eat it, it tastes like the most delicious almond you've ever had. That's why they're called bitter almond seeds or bitter almond kernels. That is actually, a lot of people think that amaretto, whether it's Di Serono or Luxardo or whatever, a lot of people think that it's made from almonds. It's not. It's made from apricot pits. Apricot pits taste and smell more like almonds than almonds do. It's crazy. So if you want to make a really, really, really good orgeat, I recommend using a combination of peeled, untoasted almonds and bitter almond seeds that are also peeled, right? They're all white, they're all clear, they're all clean. You can toast them a tiny bit, just to get them awake. Like we talked about the cocoa nibs. Wake them up, but don't make them brown. Wake them up in the oven, pour them into water, throw them into a very high. You can turn this thing up to 95 Celsius, 205 Fahrenheit, high as you can get it, and cook them and cook them and cook them and cook them. Even you could blend them if you wanted to make them smaller, right? And get as much flavor out of them as possible, and then sweeten it, add maybe a touch of salt, a few drops of orange blossom water, maybe a drop or two of rose water, right? It will be the best orgeat you've ever had, and you'll be able to tell all of your silly friends that are making like all these weird orgeats that yours is way better. And all it is just, again, being thoughtful about solubility and what you're trying to get out of these things, right? You don't want color, you want flavor, you want aromatics, right? Bitter almonds are the secret to a really, really excellent orgeat.
I love your passion. I was just thinking to myself, and to call out, people are very particular about who makes what kind of, like, let's say I'm Italian, my background, meatballs are very particular. Orgeat is the same topic. People are very particular about the make. They're very particular about how they do it. I love your passion about it, but that's some good tips. And I've had some good clear orgeat that really leaves that, really beautiful taste on your taste buds. But man,
it shouldn't be clear.
You can get on, dude. You're a great researcher. Isn't it one of those topics, though? Don't you think orgeat one of those topics that people are so passionate about, their recipe and how they make it and what they do and how they use it?
It's unfortunately, so many people are passionate about something they're wrong about.
Dude, your drive is giving me drive to Now orgeat, I have to have your recipe now. Now I have to have it in a drink. I would drink it on ice. So great, guys. Danny, I got to tell you, man, the questions that you're asking is super cool. I got to put you in touch. We have to have a more in-depth conversation. I think we'll hang out with you guys for a couple more minutes. You have a couple more questions. But while I have you, who's hospitality, who's bartender, who's interested in coming down and hanging with spirits, who's from New York? That's where we are, of course. We're Cocktail Expo. We're broadcasting all over the U.S. Eamon is our executive judge for Best Cocktail of the Year. We have some bars that are doing cocktail kits. We're in 2020. It's the centennial anniversary of the Prohibition, which we've sort of lost in the sauce and everything that's going on. It's been 100 years since then, the Prohibition. And this is the 87th anniversary of the repeal. December 5th. So December 5th, we have coming up. If you guys are interested in making an amazing Manhattan or variations of that, we have Melinda Maddox of Old Elk Distillery, who's going to be, can't wait to come back to NYC, Danny, NYC, Camilla, here we go. Yeah, we're going to talk about that. So get involved with New York Cocktail Expo. We'd love to hang with you guys. We are a small business. We're New York bartenders coming together to make some noise together and to share in the excitement of what we enjoy and to do what we do in hospitality at the most. Check out Eamon's next class. Eamon's next class with Rockies with aged spirits.
That's right.
That is so cool. I'm so looking into the aged spirits because I've thought about, we talk about infusing flavors with sous vide technique, but we're also talking about infusing flavors with aged techniques, barrels, different finishes, casks. This is a cool topic to make some really layered and fun cocktails, right?
That's right.
So for you guys missing the Repeal Day ball this year, I think, if there's anything else that you want to add that you're doing, Rocky's Botanical Liqueur, check him out on Instagram. If you guys have any questions, shoot them in now. We're about to sign off. It's great hanging out with you guys. Rockies. Somebody asked, they were like, I can't get Rockies. I can't get Rockies. Is there like now in 2020 a way that anyone can get Rockies? Is Drizzly the way to get it no matter where you are?
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, hey, I can't get Rockies.
Yeah, there are some states that have like control laws that make it a little bit difficult to ship to them. But by one means or another, there are certainly shops that ship to every single state in the U.S. for sure. On my website, there is a buy now button that I can ship to virtually every state. There are a couple that New York can't ship to, and for that, all they have to do is drop us a note, drop us an email, and I'll find a retailer myself. I'll find them a retailer that ships their state because I have bottles in New York, New Jersey, Florida, Massachusetts, Illinois, Chicago, Illinois, Wisconsin, Colorado, right? So one of these states is going to ship to them, right? So if they have an issue with the buy now button on the site, just let me know. I'll take care of it. Not a big deal.
That's super awesome. And I'm going to say that is Alicia Erickson. So why don't you get in touch with Eamon, and I'm sure she can get Rockies. Rockies is delicious. You and I know each other, but seriously, when you did your milk punch class, and I love milk punch to clarify drinks. And when you came out with this, I was like, how perfect that you're putting it on the market and this flavor profile. So many drinks blend in with each other. So many cocktails, so many riffs. It's almost like we've bookended. 2020 has bookended a certain part of the renaissance of cocktails, and we're now looking to explore all these new avenues. And that's why I love that you put this on the market. When you stir it around a little bit of ice, even on its own, all the flavors sing that you talk about, the black tea, the pineapple, the green apple, and all those flavors. And I like to have it in a highball with scotch and a lemon twist, a little bit of soda, man.
Well, that's the thing. For anybody who's picking up a bottle of Rockies to try for the first time, I recommend do your thing, but I strongly recommend, because there's so much citrus here, and it's a liqueur, so there's sweetness. Try it over lots of ice, just like I did earlier. You really want it to chill and dilute, and then from there, throw in tequila, throw in gin, throw in Empress, throw in scotch and soda and ginger beer, whatever you want, right? But like really acclimate yourself to the spirit just by chilling it over ice. It's very simple, but it makes a big difference.
I love it, man. I love it. Thank you so much for giving this incredible class. Everybody who's still here, give it up for Eamon. Thank you.
Well, happy holidays.
Thank you so much for reminding us of that. It's like I wanted to put on holiday music, but I didn't know if the audio would cover up what we were doing. But we got to get down with music. We're doing more for New York Cocktail Expo. I think we hope you guys are having a great experience with us. It's fun to connect with you. I hope you feel connected and that you're doing well and that you're happy and that we're all coming together over hospitality. Hang out at nycocktailexpo.com. There's so much more coming up. Guys, next week is Best Cocktail of the Year. Eamon, December 7th through December 15th is the People's Choice Award. Vote for your favorite cocktail. Seriously, get out there online, share it, find their hashtags. You got American Whiskey, the Bonnie of Astoria, Fuchsia Tiki Bar of New Paltz. We've got Paradise Lounge, 2-time Tiki champions back, doing the Tiki to Go Down. We've got Patent Pending of New York City, competing in both Tiki to Go Down, Best Cocktail of the Year. If you're a bartender, say what's up. Come hang out with us. We've got so much going on for you guys to do. But New York Cocktail Expo Online Week continues. We'll see you tomorrow for how to make the best Manhattan in Manhattan. Be sure to register for that class free. And we'll see you Monday for Eamon's next class. Cheers to you, buddy. Cheers to everybody.
Thanks. Happy holidays. I appreciate all of you.
Happy holidays.
Thanks.
Cheers. Bye.